Let's get right into it. Number 10, the wind cannon. Imagine standing on a battlefield, confidently holding your musket, and then suddenly, whoosh, a gust of compressed air slams into your chest hard enough to shatter your ribs. Sounds like fantasy, right? Well, in Nazi Germany, someone actually tried to make that happen. The Windkanone, or wind cannon, was Germany's bold attempt to weaponize air. The idea was to build a giant metal tube, picture a massive trumpet welded to a concrete wall, that would fire an invisible blast of compressed air at enemy planes. It was basically the world's first angry hairdryer of doom. The concept wasn't entirely insane. Engineers calculated that a powerful enough air pulse could destabilize low-flying aircraft or knock out soldiers. They even built prototypes. But here's the catch. The only thing it successfully destroyed was everyone's sense of hope. When they tested it, the cannon could knock down cardboard targets if they were standing 15 feet away. Not exactly airplane-crushing power. Pilots were probably more scared of their own boredom during those bombing runs than the so-called wind cannon. Still, the psychological idea behind it was fascinating. Humans have always been obsessed with invisible weapons, things that kill without fire or blood. It taps into that primal fear of unseen danger, the same instinct that makes us check empty rooms for ghosts, even though we know ghosts aren't real. Or are they? So yeah, the wind cannon was terrifying, but only in PowerPoint presentations. In real life, it was just a giant, expensive leaf blower with a fascist logo on the side. Number 9, the bat bomb. You know that moment when someone says, "There are no bad ideas in brainstorming"? Yeah, that's a lie. Because in 1942, the US military literally said, "What if we strapped tiny incendiary bombs to bats?" No, seriously. This was a real project. They wanted to release thousands of bats over Japanese cities, each carrying a miniature timed explosive. The bats would roost in buildings, and when the timer went off, kaboom, the entire city would catch fire. The logic was bats are stealthy, numerous, and great at slipping into small spaces. So what could go wrong? Everything. During testing, the bats escaped the laboratory and burned down part of the US airbase instead. Imagine having to explain that to your commanding officer. "Sir, the bats have defected." Psychologically, this idea came from the same twisted corner of the human mind that invents Rube Goldberg machines, except this one was designed to incinerate civilians. The project played on two instincts: our obsession with nature's adaptability and our arrogance in thinking we can control it. There's something almost poetic about it, trying to weaponize a creature that symbolizes the night, stealth, and fear. But the irony? These bat bombs ended up being too unpredictable, too chaotic, too alive. In other words, too human. So the project was quietly scrapped, and everyone went back to the drawing board, probably with a fire extinguisher nearby. Number 8, the Tsar tank. Now let's talk about a weapon that looked like someone let a child design war machines in Microsoft Paint. The Tsar tank, built by Imperial Russia around 1915, was supposed to be a revolutionary new weapon. A giant, wheel-based armored vehicle taller than a two-story building. Instead of tracks like modern tanks, it rolled on two massive front wheels the size of houses, with a tiny back wheel that looks like it came off a shopping cart. This thing looked like a bicycle for a kaiju. The idea was simple: roll over trenches, crush obstacles, and terrify enemies with its sheer absurdity. Unfortunately, physics had other plans. The front wheels were so heavy that the rear wheel just got stuck in the mud. Permanently. The whole machine tilted backward like a drunk trying to climb stairs. Soldiers reportedly laughed at it. And when your multi-ton death machine becomes the punchline of the battlefield, it's time to call it quits. But psychologically, the Tsar tank represents humanity's recurring delusion. Bigger means better. Every empire has that one guy who says, "What if we made it twice as big?" without realizing that twice as big also means twice as doomed. The Tsar tank never saw combat, but it did leave behind one lesson. Sometimes the most terrifying thing about a weapon isn't what it can do. It's the fact that someone thought it should. Number 7, the gay bomb. Yep, you read that correctly. The gay bomb. In 1994, U.S. military researchers proposed a non-lethal chemical weapon that would, quote, make enemy soldiers sexually irresistible to one another. The idea was that, under the influence of certain pheromones or hormones, troops would lose combat discipline and, uh, get distracted. I'm not making this up. This was an actual proposal submitted to the Pentagon with real funding requests. The justification? It's better than bullets. Now, putting aside how offensively stupid this was, the psychology behind it is fascinating. The gay bomb wasn't just about warfare. It was about control through humiliation. It weaponized social shame. Military planners figured, what's worse than dying? Being seen as less masculine. That's how deep the fear of social rejection runs in human psychology. We literally tried to engineer it into a weapon. It's disturbingly revealing. Humans don't just fight wars with guns, we fight them with identities. Needless to say, the project was canceled after people realized it violated both ethics and basic decency. Though honestly, the paperwork alone probably deserved a place in the Museum of Bad Ideas. In the end, the gay bomb reminds us that fear isn't always about pain or death. Sometimes it's about embarrassment. And that's what made this weapon truly terrifying. Not that it could kill you, but that it could make you a punchline. Number 6. The Hand of Glory. Before there were nuclear codes and drones, there was a dead guy's hand dipped in wax. The Hand of Glory was a medieval weapon of sorts, but not the kind you'd expect. Thieves believed that if you chopped off the hand of a hanged man, dried it, and turned it into a candle holder, it would grant you supernatural powers, like the ability to put people to sleep or unlock any door. Basically, it was a DIY necromancy kit for burglars. According to folklore, lighting a Hand of Glory in a house made everyone inside fall into a death-like sleep. Thieves could then rob the place in peace. The candle flame was said to only be extinguished with milk, because of course it was. Psychologically, this one's interesting because it shows how early humans mixed fear, guilt, and superstition into technology. It wasn't enough to break in. You had to justify it with black magic. Humans crave control, and when we don't understand the world, we fill the gaps with myth. But let's be honest, if you walked into someone's house holding a dead guy's glowing hand, they wouldn't fall asleep. They'd call every exorcist in the country. So terrifying, absolutely. Useful, not unless your goal was to get cursed and arrested. Number 5, the pigeon-guided missile. If you ever feel useless, remember, someone once spent government money training pigeons to aim bombs. No joke. During World War II, the U.S. actually developed a missile guidance system where a pigeon sat inside the nose of a bomb and pecked at a screen showing an image of the target. The pecking adjusted the missile's direction mid-flight. It was called Project Pigeon, and the idea came from none other than psychologist B.F. Skinner, the same guy who taught rats to press levers for food. He thought, hey, if rats can learn this, why not pigeons? Also, what's the worst that could happen? The training was surprisingly successful. Pigeons were rewarded with food every time they hit a target image, and soon they were accurately pecking their way to precision-guided destruction. In tests, the feathered bomb operators performed better than the early electronic systems of the time. But then, the military canceled it. Why? Because nobody wanted to trust $100,000 of explosives to a literal bird. Imagine the PR disaster if a pigeon got distracted mid-flight by a statue, or worse, another pigeon. From a psychological angle, this is hilarious and profound. Humans are desperate to make nature work for us, even if it means turning innocent creatures into unwilling war heroes. We project intelligence and obedience onto animals, hoping they'll reflect our own brilliance. And then we're shocked when they poop on our plans. Project Pigeon was quietly shelved, but its spirit lived on in modern smart weapons. Except now, the brains guiding the missiles are silicon, not seeds for brains. So yeah, somewhere out there, a flock of retired war pigeons never got their medals. Number 4, the Vortex Gun. Imagine a weapon that shoots invisible donuts of air, powerful enough to knock a man off his feet. Sounds like something out of a Looney Tunes episode, right? Well, it almost became real. The Vortex Gun was another bizarre German invention during World War II. It used explosions to create spinning rings of compressed air, vortexes, that could travel hundreds of feet and supposedly deliver enough force to kill. The weapon's inventor promised it could flatten forests and crush aircraft. In reality, it could knock over a pile of paper cups. But here's where it gets interesting. The psychological terror was real. The idea of an invisible weapon was horrifying to soldiers. You couldn't see it, hear it, or predict it. Humans fear the unseen more than the obvious. That's why horror movies don't show the monster until the end. The Vortex gun embodied that primal dread, the notion that the air itself could betray you. But in the end, like the wind cannon, it failed spectacularly. The Vortex rings lost power too quickly. It was basically an over-engineered party trick that tried to join the war effort. Still, the experiment says a lot about human nature. We'd rather chase a spectacular failure than settle for a boring success. The dream of the ultimate, bloodless weapon, one that kills invisibly, cleanly, scientifically, has haunted every generation of inventors. But this one, it just blew smoke rings of disappointment. Number 3, the Great Panjandrum. Okay, imagine two massive wooden wheels taller than a human with a giant explosive drum between them, and hundreds of rockets strapped to the outside. Now imagine rolling that down a beach toward enemy lines. Congratulations, you've just built the Great Panjandrum, one of Britain's most chaotic experiments from World War II. The plan was to launch this rocket-powered wheel from landing crafts during D-Day to smash through Nazi fortifications. Simple enough. But in testing, the Panjandrum immediately decided it hated straight lines. The rockets fired unevenly, causing it to swerve, spin, and occasionally attack its own creators. At one point, the Panjandrum went rogue and nearly flattened a group of scientists and generals observing the test. Kids on the beach were reportedly cheering, because nothing says British engineering like a flaming death wheel chasing your superiors down the sand. Psychologically, it's the perfect metaphor for overconfidence. Humans love control. We believe if we calculate enough angles and add enough rockets, we can predict chaos. But chaos laughs in mass face. The Panjandrum became a literal rolling embodiment of human arrogance, loud, fiery, and catastrophically unstable. The project was canceled after multiple near-death experiences, and one general swore never again. But if there's a heaven for weird inventions, the Panjandrum is up there, endlessly spinning in circles, screaming, "I swear this time it'll work." Number 2, Project Habakkuk. Sometimes an idea is so insane that you almost have to respect it, like building an aircraft carrier out of ice. During World War II, the British needed floating runways in the middle of the Atlantic. Steel was scarce, so one brilliant scientist proposed using pipecrete, a mix of ice and wood pulp that was supposedly bulletproof and easy to repair. They named the project Habakkuk because apparently even God needed to be involved in this one. Tests showed that pipecrete was ridiculously strong. You could literally shoot it and it wouldn't shatter. So they started planning a full-size prototype, 2,000 feet long, weighing 2 million tons, cooled by an onboard refrigeration system. Here's the problem: ice melts. And even in cold oceans, it still melts. Maintenance would have been a nightmare. Crews would have to constantly patch melting walls, drain slush, and fight mold. Also, building it would have taken more power than running an entire city. But the psychology behind it? Genius-level desperation. In wartime, creativity thrives on panic. The idea of turning the oceans themselves into weapons was intoxicating. It blurred the line between natural and artificial, between solid and liquid, between smart and completely lost it. Eventually, the plan was scrapped when steel became more available, and probably because everyone sobered up and realized, wait, are we really building a Titanic made of ice that's supposed to survive bombs? Still, Project Habakkuk remains one of the most terrifying weapons that never melted into existence. Number 1, the Doomsday Machine. Here's the final one, and it's not a joke. During the Cold War, both the US and the Soviet Union flirted with the idea of building a Doomsday Machine, an automated system that would end the world if one side was attacked. No human decision, no hesitation, just instant mutual annihilation. The Soviets even built a version called Dead Hand. If sensors detected nuclear explosions, it would automatically launch the remaining missiles, even if the entire leadership was dead. It's the ultimate paradox, a weapon that guarantees nobody wins. Psychologically, the doomsday machine is the final evolution of fear, when deterrence becomes indistinguishable from suicide. It's the human brain scaled up to planetary insanity. You know that feeling when you're angry and you say, "Fine, I'll just destroy everything"? Well, now imagine that, but with actual nukes. The terrifying part isn't just the technology, it's that people thought it was rational. In their logic, if you make the threat big enough, no one will ever dare attack. Which is kind of like saying, "I'll keep a grenade in my mouth forever. That way no one will punch me." Even now, parts of these systems still exist, quietly humming in the background, one computer glitch away from disaster. Humanity's greatest fear became humanity's final insurance policy. And that's the dark poetry of it. Every generation dreams of the ultimate weapon, but the scariest ones are the ones we actually built. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.